If you want to buy real estate but think we're in a bubble, listen up and give a huge welcome to real estate professional at Whissel Realty, Joe Corbisiero.
There he is. Woo-hoo. Mr. Corbisiero.
Yay! Happy
Sippy,
New Year.
how you doing, man? Good to see you.
Fantastic. How are you?
All right, fantastic. Hey, this is a really interesting topic today, as far as we're talking about lease options. Which, if you've looked at your 1003 application, if you've ever bought a house before, it says right on there, is this a fee simple or is this a lease option? And I think most people have no idea what the lease option is. But that's what you're here to say today, to tell people that not only is it something that could potentially protect you if you think we're at the top of the market, if you're buying, but also potentially a speculation too, right?
Right. We call it more a lease option, we call it option to buy.
Okay.
With an option to lease it as well. Actually, from December 16th, 2016, it's not mandatory to have a lease agreement along with the option to buy. Pretty new thing.
All right.
Used to be, both of them. So you live in the property, you lease it, and then you have an option to purchase it. Obviously, you are locking in the price at that moment when you writing up the contract as an option to buy in the future. Do you know how it works? Have you heard of it?
Let me tell you what I think.
Okay.
And then you tell me if I'm right.
Yeah.
So I think that a lease option is that you have a property to sell. I say, Joe, I want to buy your property, but I actually don't want to buy it. I want to do a lease option, which means I'll rent it from you essentially for $3,000 a month, and then 2 years from now I want to buy it from you for $500,000. And you have to agree to that, obviously.
Right.
If you agree to that, you say, okay, sounds good. I'll take my $3,000 and I'll sell it to you for $500 in a couple of years.
Okay.
So we do it, and then it's a certain point in time, somewhere with I think about 6 months or so before that lease option is up, we have to start the process of purchasing. Something like that. Is that how it is?
So the residential purchase agreement travels along with the option to buy. Okay, so you basically decide terms and conditions on the spot. So you can actually put it in escrow as well, and the escrow will last 2 years or a year, whatever you want. It's not mandatory, but you can have that. Okay, so the option to buy, you're basically purchasing the option. So buyer or future buyer will, that particular situation is actually the optionee, is actually purchasing the option. So there is a fee. The fee obviously is negotiable between seller and buyer. Okay, it could be $1,000, it could be $50,000. So it's something that you already can establish there between sellers and buyers. Okay, then there is the lease portion of it. Okay, on the lease portion, that is negotiable too, because there's different things that you can add to it. You can have the rent plus portion of the mortgage. Okay, or it could be just rent. Or
so when you're paying that rent, a part of it could go towards the agreed purchase price.
The principal, correct.
In the future. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So again, it's negotiable. I've seen that happening, and actually I stipulated a couple of contracts. One for myself. I actually made a great investment with an option.
You did a lease option?
Yep.
Okay.
That was one of the greatest deals, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, what happened?
It's interesting because my colleagues, I'm like, man, I never heard of it. I'm like, yeah, I know. But you can really be creative with it. So you can buy an option or actually exercise the option in the future, right? So what I stipulated at the time, because everything is negotiable, you can actually assign the option. Example. You are the seller, you want $500,000. You had the house on the market for 6 months. You couldn't sell it. Obviously, it's a little overpriced, okay? I make you an offer. I'll be like, Derek, how about this? We'll do a lease to buy option within 2 years. The rent will be $2,500, okay? I'll give you $2,000 that goes towards the rent, $500 towards the principal. I'll buy the option to purchase your house for $20,000, and I will exercise it within 2 years. In addition to that, my option to buy is transferable to a third party, okay? And you give me the okay, or the authorization, I should say, to make some improvements to the property. It's a win-win situation. I'm seeing it as an investment because I believe in the property. For you, you couldn't sell for $500,000. In the long term, in 2 years, you're actually making more than $500 because you're making $500 plus the rent, the $2,000 for 24 months. That's another $48,000. So you're $548,000. If there's no agents involved or one party, you're saving another 2.5% to 3%. Make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So at the end of the term, so when I'm exercising the option, you're actually selling for $550,000.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
So
how do you make money on that?
So, I mean, you can speculate. You have to be very careful. There's so many moving parts. If the seller is okay for you to assign the option, so to sell the option, I should say, you want to make sure that you're buying the right property. So it's going to increase in value in the next 2 years, number one, that you can add value to it. So I won't recommend to have a perfect home. Maybe something that needs a little bit of work. So you have to redo the kitchen, some paint, floorings, and whatnot. So you can, if you can save money with that in the long run, you can actually make money. I made almost $50,000 on an option. Okay.
And how did you do it? Was it by improving the property?
Correct.
Okay.
So I got the property. I stipulated in the contract that the option was assignable, and then I invested some money into the property. Okay. And I did the same with another client of mine, actually. So what I did, I lived in the property for 1 year, personally, and then I, changed floorings. I did the kitchen, some paint. I invested some money into it. Then staged, listed, put on the market. Somebody bought the option for me, and that was about it. It was a 50,000 gross. Yeah, it's a great investment.
Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah,
very nice. So does that work in all markets? Like, for example, right now, well, I think you would still say we're in a seller's market, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's say we're still in a seller's market. So is that something that, I mean, if we're in a seller's market, are sellers going to be okay with this lease option? You come as a buyer and you go, hey, I want to do a lease option. And they're like, I just want to sell the place. Like, is it harder to get a lease option through in a seller's market?
It's not easy as it used to be, but it's possible. So if I give you a classic example is if it's an investment property, okay, seller has to, either to a 1031 or has to pay capital gain, okay. If he or she doesn't need the money and it wants top of the market a little more than the property's worth, or it's a property that doesn't move because it needs any improvements and the seller doesn't have the money or enough money to do it, yes, it could be feasible, okay. I actually just made another offer, an option to buy a couple of days ago. Yeah. I like it.
Did it get accepted?
Not yet. We're stipulating. we're looking
negotiating.
Into, yes, there's a few. Like I said, there's so many moving parts. It's way more complicated than just a straight sale, because it's associated the lease to buy. I mean, the lease agreement. Then there's the RPA, residential purchase agreement. All the disclosures, and then if there's an option, if you want to do the inspections prior to it or after. Obviously, I want to do prior to it because you buying the property. You want to make sure you're buying a good piece of property that doesn't have any structural issues.
Do you think this is a good idea for people who might be buyers that have waited and they've seen values go up and up and up, and now they think, well, now if I buy, the market's just going to tank, right afterwards, and then I'm going to be stuck in a bad situation. Does a lease option help give you some protection in that case? Because if 2 years from now, you establish the price based on the market today. If 2 years from now the property's worth $150,000 less, you can just say, I don't want to exercise my option.
So I don't see we're going to go, personally, I don't see this as a bubble. And I talked about it several times. I don't feel like we might get at a point maybe in the next 16, 18, 24 months, I don't know, where prices are going to stop, or maybe, it's going to level out, let's say that. So we don't have to, we're not keep increasing year over year. As far as, the answer to your question is, it could not be the best option if you're not buying the right property. Let's put it like that.
Okay.
I have to see value in the property. If you can add value to the property, I would say yes, take the risk, because you still have to buy an option. I mean, the option, it is negotiable, but less than 20, 30 grand, you're not gonna buy it. Make sense?
Gotcha.
So you're gonna lose the money. If you don't exercise the option to purchase the property after a 2-year agreement, then you're gonna lose the money.
But it may be a lot less. If you're concerned about, it's like insurance.
Yep.
If you're concerned about the house losing 100, 200,000 in value, because that's happened to you before. Let's say you bought in 2008. Last time you bought was, you're like, you got in, and then immediately after it tanked, and you're afraid of that. And now you've watched the market go up for 5 straight years. You're thinking, oh, it's going to be me again. I'm going to buy just at the wrong time. Maybe you do pay that $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 for the option, but if the property does go down, your worst fear happens, you've only lost 25, 30 instead of 150, 200. Right? I mean, in theory, it could be a way to protect yourself.
I mean, again, it's it's like rolling the dice. You don't know. You know what's going to happen. And again, but I think it's very important to study the market, see what you're purchasing the property, if you can add value to it, and you see. So I mean, the way I see it is, even if I'm very conservative to a 3% increase per year, okay, let's do 2 years, 6%. If I can add the value to the property, adding, I don't know, new floors, a new kitchen, remodeling the whole structure, it's going to bring another $20,000, $30,000 plus the 6%, may make sense,
Okay.
And what I like to do for my clients, and even when I purchase the options, is to have the rent plus a portion of the rent goes towards the principal, even if it's minimal.
Okay, so that helps eat into it.
Yeah, you're just putting money away. Though you got to be careful. There's a couple of companies in San Diego that's all they do. Okay, they actually purchase the property for you, and then you can exercise an option to buy with them.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, they charge you an arm and a leg, but.
No, really?
Because keep in mind, I mean, most of the time, sellers, they're savvy with options. They actually want more than a rental market for the property.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which makes sense because you're asking them for something, they want to get something in return for that.
Right.
That's part of the negotiation.
Correct.
Now, it could be just the case that you find the right place where they're planning on selling in a couple years anyway, and they would like to lock in the price of today. It could be a good win-win.
Yeah.
Especially if the market keeps going up. Mm-hmm. So I could see where there's a lot of benefit there. Real quick, before we end today's segment, Joe, what do you think about interest rates going up? Because that's another thing I'm hearing buyers talk about that may make this option contract a good idea for them if they're concerned that rising interest rates is going to cause lower home values. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that whole situation?
So obviously they're increasing. The rates are going up. I talk a lot with my preferred lenders. We talk on a daily basis. And I'm always curious about how it's evolving, what's happening, what's going to happen in the next 6 months. They all tell me the same thing. Spring or summer, we're going to probably see in the fives. The rates be on the five in a conventional, on a fixed rate. As a matter of fact, there's new products coming up, or coming back, I should say. Mm-hmm. They're talking about bringing back an interest-only loan, which I don't know if it rings the bell.
I can understand that. I mean, I think the interest-only loan does make sense in some cases.
Right, exactly.
It's a lot for a lot of people who want to get a loan that is temporary, let's say, mm-hmm. Or based on circumstances. I think the interest only makes sense.
Totally.
So I don't consider that to be a subprime.
No, I don't.
Because you still have to fully qualify for it.
Correct. I mean, they're way more careful than they used to be. I mean, they're looking at tax return. Though there's some unconventional loans again coming up, but they're still looking at your FICO score and your assets, and you have to be credit worthy. Yeah. They're not just going to give you a mortgage anymore.
Right.
Good thing. So
no question.
But I've seen already the ARM, 5 and 7 ARM coming up. I don't think it's still a smart or wise idea to go on a 5 and 7 ARM yet.
Okay.
I think until we're going to see the fixed rate being a 6, 6.5, and then you have an ARM at 3, then it's like it's a half of the price.
Yeah, when the ARMs are really close to the fixed rates,
exactly.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, 3.2 to 4, it's like 0.8. Mm-hmm. Is it worth it? I don't think so.
No, not with the caps. Really.
Right.
I mean, I think you do need a little bit.
Exactly. So I think once we reach the 5.5, 6% mark, and the ARM maybe goes down a little bit, then it might be worth it.
That'll make sense.
Yeah, but I mean, there's so many programs. It's interesting because I remember just after the foreclosures, easing to 2010, 2011, it was kind of hard to get a mortgage.
Yeah,
there's just a few programs available. Now I know there's all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
It's nice.
It's back. Yeah. Well, when values go up, it makes it easier for lending to take place. When it's scarce and when markets are in decreasing circumstances according to the appraisals, it makes it really difficult for lenders to finance because they're operating on a thin margin, a thin percentage margin. It's a big dollar amount,
right?
Because you're talking about a small percentage of a big number, but it's still a thin margin percentage. So when that is in jeopardy, as we've seen, it can cause these financial institutions to lose billions of dollars in a heartbeat.
It's true.
So I do think it makes sense right now with rates where they are and with where things are at, that the market you could look at and say it's healthy. Rates going up is a good thing. I think if property values were to come in a little bit, that would also be a good thing.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a bad thing. that would help spur more activity. There's a lot of people waiting underneath this market to buy. You know, there's not going to be a big crash. There's a lot of people waiting. If this market came in 10%, there's a lot of money waiting there to buy. So maybe they'll buy, Joe, or maybe they'll do an option contract with you.
They might do an option buy.
Great stuff, man. Fantastic topic, and you know it very, very well. Joe Corbisiero, everybody, on Facebook Live. And of course, if you're watching Smarter San Diego TV, stick around. We'll continue to make you smarter than everyone else.